What if a forgotten Cold War weapon could change the course of modern warfare? Canada just made a jaw-dropping move that has left Russia scrambling, and it all revolves around a rocket you've probably never heard of. Right now, Ukraine is locked in a brutal fight for survival against Russia, with every inch of ground fiercely contested. But in a stunning twist, Canada has stepped onto the battlefield with a game-changing decision that could tip the scales in Ukraine's favor. So, how did a relic from the 1970s become Russia's worst nightmare? And can this single move truly make Ukraine's Air Force unstoppable? Let's dive in. In early autumn of 2024, a pivotal gathering took place at Ramstein Air Base, a strategic location in Germany. This is where Canadian Defense Minister Bill Blair dropped a bombshell announcement that shook the geopolitical world to its core. He revealed that Canada wasn't just sending a token of military support to Ukraine, as you might expect, but rather an astounding quantity of firepower: 880,000 CRV-7 rocket motors and 1,300 warheads. Now hold on to your seats, because the story gets even more intense. The CRV-7 isn't just any old rocket. Developed in the 1970s, it was once seen as outdated. But here's the kicker. It's actually a perfect match for what Ukraine needs right now. With such a massive supply, Ukraine can unleash a never-ending storm of rockets that can take out critical Russian defenses and military hotspots like tanks, big guns, and even those heavily fortified supply hubs. These rockets are tailored to punch through the toughest bunkers from the Soviet era, making those once feared Russian armor columns sitting ducks under a barrage of explosive rain. Before we continue, welcome to Infinite Heights, a place where the sky is not the limit. The world is beautiful, and let's gain from every little minute we have. It can be so short too. Moving on, so what's the deal with these CRV-7s? They were actually on their way to retirement, set to be dismantled at a cost of millions. But as the situation in Ukraine grew more dire, Canada had a change of heart. Why let these beasts collect dust when they could be the difference between victory and defeat for Ukraine? So they repurposed these rockets, turning them from potential scrap metal into instruments of freedom. The room was filled with military strategists from all over the NATO Alliance. And, let me tell you, some of them had their eyes wide open in shock. This move was more than a mere show of support. It was a game changer. The psychological effect on Russia is profound. This isn't just about filling Ukraine with more firepower. It's sending a clear statement. Western backing isn't weakening. It's becoming more assertive. The question remains, though, can these vintage rockets truly transform Ukraine's Air Force into an unbeatable force? The answer goes beyond the rockets themselves and into Ukraine's strategy, which we're about to explore. Now let's talk about these Cold War relics. What are they? Where do they come from? And how can Ukraine make the most of them? To grasp their significance, we need to rewind to the 1970s. The CRV-7 rockets were crafted by Bristol Aerospace in Canada, representing a big step up from the existing 2.75-inch air-to-ground missiles. These weren't your average rockets. They were a game-changer at the time. These bad boys are seriously powerful. They can be fired from airplanes, helicopters, and even adapted ground systems. With their speed, precision, and ability to break through defenses, they're perfect for taking out Russian tanks and fortifications. And here's the kicker. Ukraine is getting 880,000 of them. This means Ukraine can now keep the pressure on with airstrikes against Russian ground troops for a very, very long time. But here's the twist in the story. The CRV-7 was on the brink of oblivion. Canada had them ready to be dismantled. The budget was set. But then Vladimir Putin changed the game with his actions. And suddenly, these rockets got a new lease on life. Instead of being torn apart, they're now in the hands of Ukrainian pilots and soldiers, ready to be used in combat. These weapons are no longer just a thing of the past. They've become a tool for Ukraine to fight back, showing the world that Canada isn't just watching from the sidelines. They're actively shaping the outcome of this conflict, and that's a plot twist no one saw coming. What do you think? Is Canada's move to bring back these Cold War-era rockets a potential game-changer in the war? Or is there an even bigger surprise waiting just over the horizon? Tell us what you think in the comment section. Well, here's where things get really interesting. How will Ukraine actually deploy these rockets across its air force and ground forces? The strategy might just catch you off guard. Stick around, we're breaking it all down next. The CRV-7 isn't your typical military gear. It's a battlefield revolution. This rocket boasts precision and power that's in a league of its own. With 5 distinct warheads tailored for various combat scenarios, these babies are not to be messed with. Let's talk about the FLET warhead for a moment. Picture a colossal shotgun blast, but instead of buckshot, it's 80 tungsten darts traveling at hypersonic speeds. They can cut through body armor like a hot knife through butter, rip through vehicles, and even take down light fortifications. It's like hiding in a trench, thinking you're home free, only for the CRV-7 to turn it into a not-so-fun surprise party. Bye-bye enemy squads. And it's not just the foot soldiers who need to watch their backs. Those Russian armored vehicles? One good hit and it's lights out, turned into a blazing wreck. For Ukraine, facing a never-ending conga line of Russian tanks and APCs, the CRV-7 is a godsend, a game-changing edge they desperately need. But what about fighting when the sun goes down? The CRV-7's got that covered too. With its illumination warhead, it's like flipping on the world's most powerful flashlight. It shoots up a flare that's 1,000,000 candle power strong and lights up the battlefield for a solid 2 minutes. Suddenly, the cloak of darkness is yanked off and everything's out in the open. Drones and artillery that rely on line of sight are now playing peekaboo, and it's not fun for them. And let's not forget the smoke warhead. It's like dropping a smoke bomb the size of a small house. Everything's covered in a thick, opaque fog that's impossible to see through. Gunners are blinded, laser-guided missiles lose their accuracy, chaos is served on a silver platter. Whether you're advancing, retreating, or just messing with the enemy's heads, this warhead turns the battlefield into a foggy mystery tour. Now the million-dollar question. How will Ukraine deploy these rockets? And are they still in tip-top shape after chilling in storage? Stay tuned, guys. We've got some juicy details coming your way. Adaptability will be a key factor in the CRV-7's success, particularly considering Ukraine's knack for modifying and repurposing existing systems. This isn't just a basic arms deal. It's showcasing some serious engineering creativity. By finding innovative ways to implement a robust, albeit older, technology, the CRV-7's real strength lies in its versatility, as Ukraine isn't limiting its use to fighter jets alone. Instead, they're equipping various platforms with these rockets, thereby amplifying their influence on the battlefield. For example, they're retrofitting Soviet-era helicopters, like the Mi-8 and Mi-24, with CRV-7 rocket pods. These rockets are a notch above their Soviet predecessors, boasting improved penetration and fragmentation abilities, which makes them extremely deadly against dug-in enemy troops. But Ukraine's innovation doesn't stop there. They're also tweaking old Soviet-era ground launchers to fire CRV-7s. This clever modification turns them into highly mobile platforms that can bring the fight to the enemy, even when traditional air support isn't a viable option. Now here's where things get really interesting. Ukrainian engineers are dismantling CRV-7s and incorporating their technology into unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs. This could potentially turn the CRV-7 into a precise, long-range weapon capable of striking targets without risking human lives. Imagine UAV-mounted CRV-7s, redefining the battlefield dynamics, allowing Ukraine to hit Russian positions while keeping its pilots out of harm's way. However, there's a significant catch. The CRV-7s are currently unguided. This means that despite their power, they rely on skilled operators to ensure accurate hits, often requiring them to fly precariously close to enemy lines. But fear not, for modernization is on the horizon. Back in 2006, Bristol Aerospace started working on precision guidance kits, or PGKs, for the CRV-7. These kits could add laser or GPS guidance to the rockets, which would be a real game changer. If Ukraine manages to get their hands on these, they could transform their CRV-7 stockpile into a sophisticated precision weapon system, minimizing collateral damage while maximizing impact. And if they can pull off integrating these rockets with UAVs and upgrading them with precision guidance, well, that could significantly shift the balance in their favor on the battlefield. Stay tuned to see how this unfolds. Without guidance system upgrades, Ukrainian aviators are heavily reliant on comprehensive training to enhance the precision of their airstrikes. This underscores the pivotal role of Canada's ongoing support, which extends beyond the provision of weaponry to include the sharing of invaluable knowledge to optimize their combat capabilities. However, even with these advancements, Ukraine confronts a significant hurdle: Russia's ever-evolving countermeasures. Sophisticated electronic warfare technologies could potentially disrupt the GPS signal of these guided missiles. The effectiveness of the CRV-7 rockets is thus contingent upon Ukraine's capacity to navigate and function effectively within a highly contested aerial environment. Now let's consider the strategic implications. Is Ukraine's acquisition of the CRV-7 a tactical victory, or does Russia maintain a countermove in its arsenal? Please feel free to tell us what you think in the comment section below. The figures are truly astonishing. Russia's tank losses in this conflict are unprecedented. Based on verified information, since the start of their full-fledged invasion, they've lost over 9,833 tanks, which is nearly half of what they had in their arsenal before the war began. And now, with Ukraine having access to 880,000 CRV-7 rockets, the potential for further destruction of Russian mechanized units is not just a possibility. It's a stark reality that can't be ignored. This constant drain on resources is putting serious strain on Moscow. They're at a critical crossroads, having to decide whether to double down on risky offensives or take a step back and rethink their entire military approach. Could this increasing pressure lead Russia to the negotiation table, or will they choose to escalate the conflict further, searching for new tactics to combat Ukraine's growing military prowess? Looking at the recent developments on the battlefield, it seems like Russia is indeed trying to adjust. They're increasingly turning to older Soviet-era tanks, and there's a clear sense of urgency in ramping up their own weapon production at home. However, simply swapping out modern tanks for these outdated models is at best a temporary fix to a much larger problem. Meanwhile, Ukraine's military forces are persistently honing their precision strike capabilities, making sure that each and every Russian tank taken out of commission is a significant setback for the invading forces. However, the narrative of this conflict extends beyond the physical battlefield. There's a parallel war unfolding in the shadows, a realm of intelligence, cyber tactics, and strategic coordination, all bolstered by NATO's steadfast support. Now, Ukraine's triumph in this arena isn't solely attributed to the possession of advanced weaponry. It's about the artful utilization of these tools. A collaborative effort between Canada, NATO, and Ukrainian troops guarantees that intelligence is swiftly shared, enabling them to pinpoint and prioritize their targets with unerring accuracy. Whether it's a convoy of tanks, a critical ammo stockpile, or a key command center, these strategic strikes are meticulously planned to disrupt and degrade the enemy's operations. The significance of this intel-driven approach to warfare is hard to overstate. It allows Ukraine to preemptively hit Russian assets before they can morph into immediate threats. From logistics hubs to fuel depots, and even to troop concentrations, Ukrainian forces are effectively dismantling the very backbone of Russia's military might. This proactive targeting significantly impairs the aggressor's ability to initiate large-scale assaults, thus altering the dynamics of the war in Ukraine's favor. It's a modern warfare strategy that combines the power of information with the precision of military action, and it's reshaping the conflict in profound and meaningful ways. At the forefront of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, we're witnessing a pivotal aspect of modern warfare that's often overlooked amidst the dramatic visuals of military engagements. Cyber warfare is rapidly becoming a game-changing factor, with experts suggesting that Ukraine's international supporters are playing a significant role beyond the traditional battlefield. They're not just observing from the sidelines. These allies are deeply embedded in the digital trenches, offering real-time intel that's critical to Ukraine's combat strategies. Now let's dive into the specifics of how this cyber war is unfolding. It's believed that Ukraine's friends are actively sabotaging Russian military communications. Imagine the chaos caused by jamming the enemy's signals, essentially cutting off their digital lifeline. This interference can lead to confusion and disarray among Russian troops, leaving them vulnerable to strategic maneuvers by Ukrainian forces. But it's not just about disruption. There's also the art of deception. Ukrainian allies are reportedly hacking into Russian networks and spreading false information, a tactic that could send their adversaries on wild goose chases or into traps. The impact of these digital operations can't be understated. A military machine is only as strong as the strategy that guides it, and if that strategy is based on flawed data or non-existent intel, the results can be catastrophic. This cyber warfare is effectively blinding Russian forces, turning their sophisticated weaponry into less formidable tools. As Ukrainian defenders continue to outwit and outmaneuver their opponents through clever use of technology, the human cost for the invaders continues to rise. The cyber battle being waged alongside the physical one is shaping the trajectory of this conflict. It's a silent yet powerful front where code meets combat, and while it may not make for dramatic headlines or shocking footage, it's clear that this digital domain is crucial to Ukraine's efforts to maintain its sovereignty. But there's a crucial question we must address. What if Ukraine isn't able to fully utilize this aid to its maximum potential? Each delivery of Western military equipment and intel presents a chance for Ukraine to shift the tides of war in their favor, but let's be real, these resources do have their limits. If Ukraine doesn't manage to weave these assets into a solid, cohesive battle plan, we could see Russia bouncing back, which would mean a longer war, and that might make Western supporters question their long-term involvement. The stakes? Oh, they're sky high. This isn't just an arms race. Thank you so much, and see you in the next one.